Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with coverage of the RNC final day of their national convention. All right, let's go through it. Lots to cover here. As you can see, they had it on the front lawn of the White House, and you could see it there. People said you could hear the protest in the background. I couldn't hear them, but I don't know. I wasn't listening to it. So I listened for it a little, but I didn't hear any of it. Don't know who that guy was. Don't remember him. That he's Kevin McCarthy. I think that's his name. I forget him. I forget everybody's names, but I do remember the highlights. Oh, there's Jeff Van Drew, who I just talked about on the Piney podcast. Again, very important that Van Drew win, especially in New Jersey, to send a message to the Democratic Party, come back to the middle, and stop entertaining these communists and socialists in your party. This is a commercial. Jesus, I totally forget people's names. I don't remember him. Kind of looks like Pompeo, but that's not him. There's Mitch McConnell. He gave his speech. Dana White, who's UFC president. His speech was actually pretty good. Very sort of pro-American kind of thing. Don't remember him. She runs a business. I forget which one. She was like another business leader. Oh, that's part of a commercial. There was a commercial. Oh, now this was the big speech. This was the most moving speech, even more moving than Donald Trump. This is Mrs. David Dorn. David Dorn, for those of you who don't know or don't remember, during the Minneapolis riots, the early ones, there was David Dorn, and he was a retired police captain, African American, who went downtown to defend his friend's pawn shop because he had met his friend, and she tells the whole story. He had met this guy who ran the pawn shop when he was working, and he was a kid, and they became friends, and like I don't think he was arrested or anything, but like Dorn was friends with the guy, and then eventually the guy opened this pawn shop, and he would help him do security, on occasion, because he was a retired police officer and had been a police chief too. So he went down there to deal with some rioters who had broken into the pawn shop, and the rioters not only shot him, I believe they shot him, and while he was bleeding out, they live streamed it. And if that's not horrific, they live streamed his death. And not only that, the most horrific thing, and this was revealed in the widow's speech here, his grandson happened to be watching. He didn't realize who he was. He was watching feeds on Facebook and stumbled across this, and he watched his own grandfather bleed out. I can't think of anything more horrific or traumatizing to see. It's just an absolute horror. She was very genuine in her speech, and it was very sad. Very sad. What happened to David Dorn should have never happened. And anyone who supports these riots, you're just missing the entirety of what these riots are doing to people. And David Dorn, here's David Dorn, a police officer, a stand-up guy, senselessly killed by criminal thugs who have no interest in George Floyd or anyone in the black community or police reform. These were just thugs. They just took advantage of the riots to try to rob some guy, and then they ended up killing a retired police officer, a retired police chief. And, so for people who say, oh, this is all racial and blah, 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 black people, the voices of the unheard and all that BS, this is an African-American man who was killed and one of, a law-abiding guy, had a career in law enforcement his whole life, was straight as an arrow, and he gets killed over a pawn shop. It's disgusting, and this is what wins Donald Trump the election, amongst all the other things that are going to win it for him. Ben Carson spoke, and he also spoke about racism in America, and basically, defended Trump. And everybody who calls Trump racist, it's like, why does Trump have so many black supporters? Why does he have so many Hispanic supporters? Why does he have so many Jewish? I mean, he's got so many supporters across the rainbow, the spectrum. Oh, well, those people are different somehow, and they don't really have an answer, and it just shows you their TDS when they don't. This guy is Patrick Lynch. He's like I think he's the president of some organization for the NYPD. Giuliani spoke, and it says a lot that the DNC has, amongst other things, rebuilt the reputation of Rudy Giuliani almost single-handedly. I mean, Giuliani was and is a very authoritarian guy. He is. The stuff he did in New York City, a lot of people give him credit for cleaning up the city, and he did, but he used very authoritarian means to do it. And he got away with a lot of things. People called him America's mayor during the whole 9/11 crisis. The guy messed up 9/11. He put the emergency response in one of the towers. He had cronies. There's this article that I think was in the Village Voice about the radios that the emergency services used and how bad they were, and like Giuliani got involved in the contract, and it got pushed on. They already had bad radios. They got pushed onto this company, and if I'm remembering all the details, and I'm probably not, but what I remember is it was something like the radios were bad, and then they switched to this new company, and they were even worse. They were so bad they had to go back to the old radios. And that's part of what they were dealing with on 9/11 when all that happened. And so they had problems even communicating during the emergency. And a lot of that's on Giuliani. So he's no saint, this guy. But he came out and, despite the fact of all that, he still made many valid points about Bill de Blasio's utter incompetence. Incompetence. It's not even incompetence. De Blasio is a criminal, I think. I think it's just absolutely criminal what he's done in New York. And I'm not a fan of New York. I've gone there many times. I don't really like the city itself. But, when I went there in the past, it was functional. It was a city. I didn't feel totally unsafe. It's a city. You got to be careful. But what de Blasio has done, it's nightmarish. And he really needs to be held account. If any Democratic figure in this mess needs to be held to account, I think it's de Blasio. And then right after, Cuomo. It's just a disgrace. But I digress. Giuliani made some great points about New York, and he is very much against the communists, so good for him. Good for him. Tom Cotton, of course, he's come around a little bit. He has a few extreme views that I do not like. He's a bit of a neocon. But I think the influence of Trump has sort of rounded off the rough edges on him. And he's more focused on important things within the borders of the United States. And I think he's been doing a better job. The parents of Kyla Mueller, and another sad, tragic story. Alice Johnson. I don't remember any of these people, but to me their speeches were a little bit forgettable. But they were okay. They were uplifting. And then Ivanka came out, and she looks great. She looks great. She presented well, and she's got her father's sort of feisty attitude. So she gave a decent speech. And then she introduced, let me find him, Trump! Da, da, da. And they were saying all sorts of things about Trump on Twitter, including that his hair is blowing in the breeze. It looks heroic. um, Trump's speech was good. He always gives a good speech. It's not as good as his off the cuff stuff, which there was some of, but not a lot of. I mean, he had to sort of be on point, and there was a lot to cover. And so my main criticism of his speech, and I'm really nitpicking here, was that it was just long. It was a long speech for Trump. He gave a very long speech. It was very impassioned, although I watched some of the coverage at Sky News in Australia, and which is an interesting take to watch, like people from other countries look on the outside looking in. And he said that he thought Trump ran out of gas towards the end a bit. Yeah, maybe. I mean, but then he did go off script towards the end too, and that was good. Whenever he goes off script and sort of just riffs, it's usually pretty solid stuff. But he had so much to cover, right? He had to thank a bunch of people, of course, and he had to cover like stuff he's been doing and stuff he's gonna do and stuff that's happening. I mean, so much has happened in his administration. It was just, you could hear him just trying to like go through it all, and it's really amazing. Even just this year. I mean, 2016 feels like it was a million years ago. But Trump was good. I mean, it was a solid speech. My top speech is still the Mount Rushmore speech. I think the Mount Rushmore speech will probably go down as history as Donald Trump's best speech. I mean, maybe there's a better one in the future, but man, that speech was like perfect beginning to end. But that was a shorter speech. It was a lot more pithy. This one, well, again, it was good, but it was a bit long. And, people are making fun of him, and, good for you if you can do it. But, I mean, the kind of memes they're making, they're still missing the mark. They're not biting because they're not honest. Comedy's about honesty. Comedy's about a shared experience, and the left has neither. They're not honest. They're too busy being partisans, and they don't have that shared connection because they don't live in this reality. They live in a reality in which Trump is the bad guy from World War II, and that's just hyperbolic nonsense. So, all over Twitter, Biden's people were tweeting about the speech and trying to kind of knock it down. It was just lame. Didn't really work. But, you could see he had a lot of people there. Most people weren't wearing masks, although a few were. And, but they were outside. I'm sure they're fine. And, one of the criticisms was, is this going to be like a super carrier of the beer virus? Oh, no, people are going to get the beer virus. Like anybody in media cares anymore. The same people who are taking off their masks during the press briefings as soon as they thought the cameras were off. Yeah, right. Like you guys give a flying F. And then the end, I don't know if it's on this version of the events here. You see American flags. Look at all those American flags. Holy crap. It was a lot of fireworks at the end. A lot of fireworks. And at one point, I don't know if they have it here. I don't know if I can find it, but they shot a bunch of fireworks in the air and it spelled out Trump. It looked pretty badass. Oh, and then they ended the night with a little opera. It was very classy. Very classy. I think it was opera. I mean, it sounded like opera to me. So, a real solid night for the Republicans. There was excitement. There were guest stars. It was emotional. It was, it connected way more than the DNC. I mean, way more. I don't know how people can watch the two events and not give it to the Republicans. You know, the Republicans at least felt like they were at a convention. As a lot of people said, the DNC felt like it was a Zoom meeting and not a very good one. And you know, the RNC celebrates America. The DNC can't. You can't say, well, there's systemic racism. Hooray, America! Hey, let's all kneel and during the national anthem. Hooray, America! Those two kind of concepts clash with each other. You know, make up your mind. I mean, if you're going to hate America, just come out and hate it, I guess. But I don't think that's a very winning strategy. You know, this idea that the DNC had to cater to the hard left, you know, it's just foolish. But the action wasn't over after the fireworks. There were more fireworks after the convention, which I'll get into the next video because the rioters were numerous and a lot happened. So I'm going to wrap this one up. RNC, good job, and we'll see you in November.